Hi, I'm the Paranoid King. I'm currently ranked Platinum on my main account and looking to get better by analyzing my gameplay. Hopefully you too can learn from my mistakes and thought patterns to improve your own games. I don't really like the Lilac Galaxy, and I'm glad it's going away as I think it's not very balanced. It's definitely best to go for a carry. Everyone always goes for Kale, as you can see, and I never get her when I try, and so I went for Irelia instead, especially since Bow is a good component for her that can go into Last Whisper. Irelia is pretty flexible as a carry and good to have early, as Cybers and Blademaster are both easily hit in the early rounds. I'm definitely aiming to get Cybers to start with, as I think that's super strong early game. I like the Leona pair as that's pointing me down the path of Cybers, but nothing in this next shop gives me anything for Cybers, Vanguards, or Blademaster, so I picked up the Jarvan as he'll give me some extra attack speed. I plan to sell him later on though, as I think he's one of the weakest units in the game. I definitely didn't think about it earlier, but Mana Reaver is also a synergy I could get with this early game Irelia, especially since my Leona is 2-star, and I don't need an extra frontline. I put in the Darius instead of the Jarvan. Mana Reavers should be at least one space apart so they don't hit the same unit, as their effect does not stack. Here I have an interesting choice, and I'm not actually sure which one is stronger. I end up putting in the Jarvan because 2-stars are good to have for early game, but I could have put in the Fiora, which would have given me Cyber Synergy, and I have enough items that I could have just thrown them on to the Fiora and the Leona, and the Irelia already had an item. I think that might actually have been stronger. I just really don't think Jarvan's all that great. None of the units in this shop are terribly great for me, but I pick up some pairs just to have them. Neither of the components that I got are good to put on Irelia. She really only wants physical damage items and then maybe a defensive item. Darius is a good item carrier though, as he falls off late, so the rod could go well on him. My Irelia spent a long time walking up at the beginning of this fight, and the Poppy took forever to take down, so I was worried that I might lose. But since I won, I think I should have sold my whole bench to hit 10 gold, as I don't really need any of these units except the Fiora, and she's easy to find. The best component to combine with the bow that's already on the Irelia is definitely Glove for Last Whisper, so that's definitely my top choice. If I don't get that, a second rod for Deathcap on Darius is also very strong. Swords are generally good for Irelia. I have last pick, so I'll probably end up with something I don't really need though. Unfortunately, the sword was too far away, so I have to get a cloak. I pick up the higher cost unit to get 4 gold instead of 2. Cloak generally goes into several useful utility items like Ionic Spark, Zephyr, and Swordbreaker. I was worried about my Irelia getting stuck again, but I put her next to Darius so they will likely hit the same target, only giving me 1 unit affected by the Mana Reaver synergy instead of 2. Something I do throughout this game that I think is a mistake is picking up extra copies of units that are already 2-starred. I don't need to 3-star any units because I'm not running a hyper roll comp, and the gold is far more useful to be able to reroll for better units later on in the game. I'm holding on to a lot of units because I'm not sure what I want to put in, but I have an Irelia and should be focused on building up a board around her. I need Blademaster and Cybers for this, so the Shen is definitely good to pick up. Even though my Darius was set back, and so didn't take aggro from the front line, the Kale targeted him first, so he died before he could do much. This person's board is very strong because they got the early Kale, which is part of the reason why I think that Lilac Galaxy is kind of broken. Shen gives me Blademaster and Fiora gives me Cybers. I should sell the Jarvan and add both of them in. I'd also like to pick up the Graves, as he could give me the Pirate synergy later, though he is not as important to put in now. I'm getting a lot of bows which are good for Kale. I think I should have made a Rageblade on Darius as an item holder, and put a Zephyr on one of my Cybers. The extra cloak could go on the other one just for the buff. Luckily I realized at the last minute just how much of an improvement it is putting Shen in over the Jarvan. I should pick up the Xayah as she actually ends up having some usefulness late game, giving me both Blademaster and Celestial. I'm just sort of picking up what's good as I go along, so I don't need to hold on to these extra copies of Leona, as there's no guarantee that I'll end up playing Cybers, which is really the only time that you would need a 3-star Leona, and even then you don't really need her. Jace is a great unit to pick up, as he would give me both Vanguard and Pirate, as well as just being a good unit in general. I put my Fiora in the back, as there are a fair amount of Infiltrators and Blitzcranks in this lobby. I think the better positioning would just be to move everybody to the back line. Irelia is my carry, but I barely have any items on her. I really need a glove or a sword here. The glove would be to combine with the bow that's already on her for Last Whisper. I have a sword on my bench, and so another sword could become Deathblade, which is a really strong item right now, especially since her ability scales off of her attack damage. I prioritize the glove since I already have a bow committed to her. I have strong synergies, but my units are pretty weak. I may need to roll soon to stabilize if I lose a lot of rounds. Since I have some time, when I scout, I should be looking for any potential Zephyrs or Blitzcrank hooks or any other sort of disables, like maybe a Shroud of Silence, to position around. Kassadin is a better unit than Darius, but I think I would still keep the Darius until I find a Wukong, since having gold from the pirates is going to be useful, since I'm looking like I'm going to have to roll down a lot soon. Something I should also be scouting for at this point is to see if anyone else has copies of Irelia, to see how hard it is going to be to find her. I don't need 3-star Fiora, but I do want that Shen. My board is looking much better now. I'm going to sell the Darius anyway, so I think I'm definitely back in a position to think about leveling instead of rolling. Redemption is one of my favorite utility items, as it really can turn some games around in your favor. The Infiltrators went right for my Darius, and my Irelia got stuck on a Malphite, so this was a pretty bad loss due to positioning. I'm missing Chrono, so the best unit to put in is the Blitzcrank. I don't need Ashe, as she really doesn't fit anywhere with the units or synergies that I have. Kayle is a strong unit and will also benefit from Blademaster, so I decide to put her in instead. This is another fight where Infiltrators nearly take down my whole team that I could have avoided by positioning further towards the back. I only got lucky that Darius's ult was perfectly timed. Here I switch the Blitzcrank in for the Kayle, as I prioritize the Chrono over having Kayle as an extra Blademaster, at least until I 2-star Kayle. This carousel has lots of good items. Deathblade is great for Irelia, and Rageblade is one of the best items for Kayle, so those would be my top 2 picks. Hand of Justice is also really good on Kayle. If all of those get taken, I'd have gone for the Thieves' Gloves, as that's an amazing item that instantly makes any unit much stronger. So now I have a Rageblade, but I don't actually have a Kayle on my board. I should have put the Rageblade on the Darius, as he is my item holder, instead of having it sit uselessly on my bench. This fight was very close, and having that extra bit of damage and speed might have actually turned it in my favor. I don't think I needed to level yet, since I still need to 2-star my carries. I was too panicked about getting Kayle out there to use the Rageblade when I had a perfectly good Darius for it, and I spent the gold instead of having it to then be able to reroll to make my carries stronger. Another glove means I can put Infinity Edge onto Irelia, which is another one of the best items for her. I definitely want to do some rolling to 2-star either my Irelia or my Kayle. I get a Wukong, and luckily 2 Irelias show up in one shop so I can stop rolling. I should have switched the Wukong in for the Blitzcrank, but kept the Blitzcrank on my bench. I'd like to eventually put in a Thresh, so I'm keeping units that he could pull in the back of my mind. Blitzcrank is a really good unit because he ults and hooks somebody as soon as he gets pulled in. This is also the reason that I kept the 2-star Soraka. Even though it means I would lose Mana Reaver, I definitely think switching Gangplank in for Darius would have been stronger, as his ult does so much damage, and Darius is just hanging out at 1-star, not doing much. I've picked up several Cybers, thinking about going 6 Cybers since that's a comp I like, but I think in this case it's a mistake. As my current board is strong and I am unlikely to find a lot of Lucians at this point, I'm a little too focused on playing a comp instead of realizing that the current sort of mishmash of things is actually very strong and a viable comp. I have 3 components sitting on my bench not being used. It's not optimal, but I could put a Renons on Irelia so she gets extra attacks, even though the extra attacks cannot critically hit. Zephyr or Ionic Spark are good utility items that I would put in just about every situation. Bloodthirster also could have been good to put on the Irelia, but at this point I think I need more survivability than I do damage. I put the Zephyr on the Fiora as I don't really care where she is positioned, so I can move her around based on where the enemy carries are. I need to scout more in general, but definitely now that I have both Blitzcrank and Zephyr and fewer opponents left in the lobby. I'm holding onto this 1-star Darius for far too long. I really need to replace him, so I'm hoping that either a Cassidon or a Thresh shows up in my shop sometime soon. Since I already have 2-star Soraka, I should also pick up the Karmas and think about putting in Mystic, if I look at what my opponent's boards are and see if any of them have lots of magic damage. I think 3-starring Leona actually negatively impacted me, since she has Redemption and now is not likely to die before my other units, so the benefit of having that item is completely wasted. Zeke's isn't a bad item for this comp, although it does force my hand when it comes to positioning a little bit, as the benefit applies to the unit that it's on as well as the ones on either side. I generally like to space my units out at this point, since a lot more champions have AoE damage, and Zeke's makes that a little bit harder. I have a pretty strong board, am low health, and have a lot of gold, so I think leveling here was definitely the right move. I think about pivoting to 6 Cybers here, but that would significantly weaken my board, plus I don't have enough time to think about who to swap and what items to put on them, as well as actually doing the swap. If I was going to pivot that hard, I definitely should have planned it out a round before. I definitely did not position optimally either for the Infiltrators or for the Zeeks, and so I end up losing here, coming out in 4th place. Thank you for watching. I release a new video every 3 days, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and comment if you have any suggestions. Thank you.